Welcome to another episode of Tractor Roy. My name is Trent, and we're working on the John Deere 70 today. We got a clutch that we're going to throw in here. Should pretty much be the last of it. We did get the new LEDs thrown in the C, so this is ready to get out of here as well. So I've got a new lapel mic, so trying that out. Hopefully this sounds a little better than the past videos have been. I'm kind of trying to play around with stuff still, trying to figure out what the best way of me filming it, how it works for me. So drop a comment down below if you like it, if you hate it, if I need to change something, if you got any other ideas for this to be a little better for your viewing pleasure. So with that being said, let's get after it. Here's our clutch. We're disengaged right now. This thing is so fried, it doesn't really matter. I think you're supposed to have it engaged to take it off first, but this thing's just toast. So we're going to take off these 4 nuts. So we're going to take off these 3 nuts. Okay, now that all these nuts are pulled off, the washers are removed, we're going to start disassembling this clutch. So we've got this outer pressure plate, then we're going to have a friction disc, then a steel, then a friction disc, and then a steel, then another friction disc, then the driving steel that has a little gear. Well, actually it's right here. And then we have to pull that off behind it. There's going to be another 4th friction disc. So there's going to be a total of 4 steels if you count the outer and then the inner drive one and the 2 in the middle. And we're going to have 4 different friction discs sandwiched together. So how this clutch works is when you throw the engagement lever forward, there's some little dogs we'll see here in a little bit that push forward against this, so then everything kind of sandwiches together. So when it's engaged, all those frictions and steels are sandwiched together, and then the friction material grabbing against the steel plate is what transmits the power to the transmission so you can go forward and whatnot. So when you disengage this lever, then it releases the pressure on those dogs, and then it separates it. So the clutch and the steel will still kind of be touching, but they won't have any pressure on it, so it won't engage it. It won't burn it up, as long as it's adjusted right. Sometimes it's kind of fun getting these things lined up. So there's our outer plate. These all have names. I just haven't looked in the parts manual. Here's our first friction disc. This one, open center. And then there's springs. 2 of them just came off with that thing. Oh. Maybe there are only 2 springs in this thing. Oh, no, there's 3. Okay, I did get new springs for this. But they all did come out. So, next, we're going to have a driving steel. Right there. After that, another friction disc. And these middle 2 friction discs, so the outer ones are just the rings, and the middle 2 are going to have these tabs. And sometimes they're kind of fun to get off here. So 3 outer tabs. So the middle 2 have these. This one is where the problem lies. It's broken here and totally just gone off of this. We'll talk about that in a second. What probably happened and how we can prevent that from happening next time. So we're going to have another steel. This is the final steel aside from the driver in the back here. We're going to have another one of those 3 tabbed ones. Right there. This one's not in as well, it's in bad shape, don't get me wrong, but it's not in as bad a shape as that other one is. You can see there's a ton of material missing here. And then it got so hot it started just melting out, oozing out the adhesive. So now we're going to take this bolt off and this washer and whatnot. And then what you do is take 2 1/2-inch bolts, run them in here, and just start sucking them down, and it'll pull this off. So this gear is attached to this plate, and this whole thing sits on a shaft. So when we stick those 2 bolts in there, it'll start working this whole plate off, and then we can get to the last friction disc behind it. I'm going to use an impact to get this thing off, just so it hopefully it doesn't spin on me. Big old bolt. Okay. Now the only thing preventing us from getting this last steel off is just friction, rust, probably. So we'll see how bad this is. Hopefully it's not terrible. I mean, you can tell this thing's been heated up. So we'll just run our bolts in, pop it off. We'll see when it's done. Okay, bolts are threaded. I threw a little penetrating oil on there. It'll probably just hurt me later. Get on that clutch and make it slip. So I'm just going to start working these down fairly evenly, and hopefully that thing ought to pop off. Oh. Give her a little love tap. Oh, this is probably all asbestos dust too. Probably all asbestos dust. I'm gonna back this off and see if I clean those threads a little. Ugh. I'm gonna run a tap through that. Woohoo! Look at that. Quick pause on the clutch project. LED bulbs are all swapped out in the sea. I think that's pretty much the last thing. This tire we're probably going to wait till spring because it's cold. Tires suck when it's cold. Okay, so there's a ton of rust and stuff in this thing, so I'm just going to clean out this hole with a tap real quick. I think I'm to the bottom of it. It was just squealing a whole bunch. I don't really want to listen to that thing. And I'd rather not strip the threads. Much better. Oh yeah. Oh, maybe not. Okay. Just like that. Sweet. So, let's see what else we got going on here. God, that's nasty. I'm going to spray this out real quick, try and clean it up, and we'll be back in a minute. So, here's all of our parts. I got 3 springs for that outer plate. Once they get old, you know, they're just getting weak. They're cheap enough, I'd rather just replace them. So, we got 2 replacements for the 3-tab ones, the inner clutch facings, and then 2 of these for the 2 outermost ones. So, comparing these two, I think this one was our inner one. There's huge amount of difference in those two. Oops. So comparing them, there's a huge amount of difference in those two. These old ones were very worn. And, I mean, not only that, they even have grooves. Only on one side, but these ones don't have grooves at all. And then as far as these, I mean, yeah, you can tell how bad they are. That's what they're supposed to look like. 2-sided. They both match. This one, and then this one is just totally gone. This one's totally gone. So what I think happened here, these clutches are user serviceable and adjustable part. They're not self-adjusting. They're not like a, you know, one like on the C right here, or even on a vehicle or whatever, where they're in line. You know, as that clutch wears, the pressure plate makes up that difference because it's always keeping pressure against that clutch. So as the clutch wears, that pressure plate is still pressing with the same pressure as that clutch wears down. With these, that's not the same way. When you engage this, that clutch only moves a certain amount, or that pressure plate only moves a certain amount. So as the clutch facings wear, that pressure plate will have less and less pressure that it's exerting on this thing, because there's this stack height will just get thinner and thinner as those facings wear. So you do have to keep this adjusted every now and then. You know, just go through and tighten the nuts as they wear to just kind of make up that difference. So what I think happened in our situation here is it didn't get adjusted, and when it doesn't get adjusted right, your clutch will start slipping. If your clutch slips, it starts building up a bunch of heat, and you can start burning off your clutch facing. So if you don't catch it in time, you'll just keep slipping and slipping and slipping, and it grinds it off. That could be what happened, because then it eventually got to the point where it totally lost that one friction, or that one side of the friction material. So then they had to suck this thing down almost all the way to the end of these studs just so it would get enough grip. And then how I noticed it is this thing was so tight to try and make up for that friction being missing that it would not disengage without hitting the brake. So even just sitting here, these clutches are stacked so tight because they had to tighten down to make up for that material not being there. They're stacked so tight together that it would just stay in gear. So like if you started it just like this before, you wouldn't be able to put it in gear. Like you have to start it in gear with the clutch disengaged, and it would be okay. And then every time you go to stop, you'd have to hit the brakes. That way it'd break those things free. So another thing to keep in mind with these, there's another thing that could have happened. It's not good to run these with the clutch disengaged in neutral when it's just sitting here spinning, for that same reason. On these other tractors that are with an inline engine as opposed to one horizontal like this, that clutch is always engaged. Like no matter what, that clutch is engaged until you push your foot on the clutch. So then you push your foot on the clutch, it disengages it just for the amount of time that your foot is on it. As soon as your foot lets off, that pressure plate puts pressure back onto it. When it's sitting there idling, even in neutral, your clutch is still engaged with the flywheel, with the pressure plate. On these, it's only engaged when it's forward. So you can be back, which is just like you holding your foot on the clutch. Like on a vehicle, if you leave your foot on the clutch, like at a stoplight, for instance, you'll wear your clutch out faster than if you take your foot totally off the pedal when you're stopped and idling. Same thing with this. You know, as if your lever is back, your clutch is disengaged, it's just like you got your foot sitting there on the clutch at a stop sign. These material, or the clutch material, will just be going back and forth, grinding against that steel, slowly wearing it down, heating it up. So that's why you want to have this thing engaged in neutral idling. That's part of that's a downfall with these things. But as long as you can remember it, you know, just throw it in neutral, engage the clutch. It's really not that big of a deal, but it is something to think about. Also, all of the steels that are layered in here with the clutches, those are all replaceable too. They're fairly reasonable. I think like the whole kit was maybe like $500. With just these clutches I got, I want to say it was like $120. So I'm going to start throwing this stuff back together. It's very important that you make sure you get this in the right order. It goes clutch facing like this, then that fixed steel, then and then this clutch, then a sliding steel, then another one of these clutches, and another sliding steel, and then the second facing, and then your outer plate. If you don't get it put back in that order, then if you have like two steels next to each other or two clutches next to each other, you won't have anywhere near the power going through this thing that you should. Also, across these two cylinders, it's pretty much the same setup. This one, because it's a 70, it has an extra clutch and driving disc, just because of the extra power of it. I'm pretty sure like the 80s have it too, and the 20 and 30 series. But the 50s and 60s and the letter series, I'm pretty sure only had one of these and one sliding steel. But don't quote me on that. So also, if you're worried about this being above your skill set, this is like ridiculously easy. Honestly, this video is about in real time. Like if I didn't have to move the camera back and forth, less than an hour for taking this stuff apart. If it was if stuff was rusted up more, it'd sure be a lot harder and take a lot longer. But this stuff was pretty easy, so yeah, not that bad at all. So one thing you want to keep in mind on this when you're throwing this thing together, you do not want to put these on your studs. Also, these studs are replaceable, but I'm not replacing them. So you want to make sure that you stick them on these studs without threads, not the studs that you adjust your nuts on. Oh, I can't forget that. I suppose it doesn't matter what order you do this in, as long as you do it. Okay. So we got that. Go ahead and throw on a sliding disc. These are replaceable, like I was saying. This is so easy. I'm just going to reuse the old ones because it's so easy to replace this. If I start having issues, then I'll dig back into it, get new steels for it. But I'm pretty sure I'm only going to use this for baling. Probably not going to use this for any plowing because it's not like we do any row crop around here. Just hay. Oh, that looks much better. It was so far on this shaft last time. Forgot to do these springs. Oh, those things are gross. I hope those sparks flying off got caught on camera. That was kind of cool. So I checked this out pretty good, or at least those other steels. When these steels heat up like this, like when the clutch burns up, they can stress crack. You'll see a ton of discoloration and a bunch of little tiny cracks on it. So same thing with like the flywheel on your vehicle or a flywheel on a different tractor too. When it heats up, because your pressure plate comes with your clutches, well, the flywheel is a separate item. So you want to make sure of that, because you'll see these like little clutch cracks that spread out through here where it's been heated up too much. But these ones all look okay. So I got replacements of these just so it puts some even pressure down across these things. This thing's not going to know what to do with itself. So after I took this thing apart and then found out that the clutch was bad, I just threw it back together and I adjusted it how it should be adjusted. Not as tight as what it was, so it wasn't sticking. I tried to throw it in road gear and it just slipped the clutch pretty bad. There was just smoke pouring off of it. But it served its purpose. I just needed to be able to drive it out of here, which we didn't actually need to take it out, but I needed the ability to take it out. I don't like stuff sitting for... And I didn't know when I was going to be able to order this and whatnot. Okay, now this final friction just lays in there like that. So make sure you go from the back. Very first thing, friction, then that driving clutch or the driving steel, another friction with the 3 holes, a sliding steel, another friction with the 3 holes, a second sliding steel, and then your final friction goes inside of this outer plate. So now these springs line up over top of these studs and they push down on these facings here. Oh no, they don't. Okay, so our springs, in between each of these 3 here, there's a little pocket, and these springs will fit right into that pocket. So it all kind of lines up. Your threadless studs are here, here, and here. Our springs are here, here, and here. And then our nuts go here, here, and here. So how it says to do this is you start with it engaged, your clutch lever engaged, and you kind of just tighten these 3 down until it feels good. And then you try your clutch lever, and you want it to have a nice, good snap. So I'll kind of just tighten these evenly. I'll probably do it until it just starts grabbing. Actually, I'll start them so that the ends of these studs are just flush with the nut. And then I can go from there. Okay. Let's see. Yeah. And this is something I'm probably going to have to play with. You know, just drive the tractor, especially in road gear. Especially with a load on. See how it does. Ooh, that's too much. Yeah, see, that's too much again. So you don't want to go too much on this because you can break off this lever on both, your clutch engagement lever on both of my 2 cylinders. The 36B I got sitting outside and the 70. Somebody has snapped this off. My guess is they engaged this, or they tightened this too much, so it's too much engagement when they're going to throw it in. Okay. It's a pretty positive engagement. I like it. So for the finale, we're going to throw 3 new cotter pins in these castle nuts to keep this thing from backing off so we don't have to adjust this. I don't have a flywheel cover on this. It didn't have one, or a clutch cover. It didn't have one when I got this thing, but I'll probably add that to the list. Maybe I'll see if the next time I go out there's got one laying around that he'll get rid of. So the fun part about this is you kind of have to, well, I'm sure you guys have used castle nuts before, but you got to just move it back and forth just a little bit until that hole lines up. Whew, okay. The last one fought me a little bit, but I got all 3 of these things on there, so that thing won't back off. If I'm having issues, the clutch is slipping, like especially in road gear when I'm trying to drag a trailer or something behind this or some implement, then I'll just have to pull these cotter pins back off, tighten it down a little bit, you know, just kind of work it down evenly and a little bit at a time. So, thank you for sticking around with me on this thing. Super easy to do yourself. Really basic tools. I mean, just what, 7/8 for the outer 3, 1.25 inch maybe for that center one, and then 2 half-inch bolts pull that plate off. Like, no big deal. I could do that in the middle of a hayfield if I really needed to. I don't want to, but it's good to know that you can do that. So, as always, thank you for watching. Thanks for sticking around. Make sure to hit that subscribe button if you're not subscribed already. Hit the like button. And then throw a comment down below if you like what I'm doing, if you want to see something different, if you want to see anything else being worked on this tractor or any of the other tractors or projects we got. So, I'm thinking up next, this thing's done. We're going to be working on a couple of Alice Chalmers probably. Keep an eye out for that video. We're going to be swapping them out in here, start working on those too. So, thanks for watching Tractor Roy, and I hope I'll catch you on the next one.